welcome to this episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Odd One Out with your host Mark. Today I'll be talking about 10 more episodes of Star Trek The Original Series as part of an ongoing set of podcasts about this particular series. This is episodes 1 to 10 of Season 3, a much maligned season, often described as pretty poor, but we'll see as we get into it. The first episode in this season was Spock's Brain, which is kind of a notorious Star Trek episode. It's often considered the worst Star Trek, the original series episodes. But watching it, I don't think it is the worst. It's nowhere near the worst. The worst one so far is definitely the Alternative Factor, which was completely the last episode of season 1. It was that which was terrible. It had some entertainment values. I can see why Leonard Nimoy hates it. In fact, I think most of the cast also consider this a pretty bad episode, or the worst one. But and it's clear why Nimoy doesn't like it, because he's acting like a robot. It's kind of stupid what he has to do. It is pretty bad, but however, there was some interesting stuff in it. It was entertaining, as I say, but it does feel like the writer didn't really know the characters, and the ideas are poorly executed and developed and stuff. The idea was interesting, a kind of more like Eloy idea from the Time Machine, but in terms of separating the sexes rather than by class, but this sort of thing needs pretty good writing to pull off, and the whole effort's kind of poor. It's silly, and it's kind of got its charms, but it's definitely not a great one. That then brings us to episode 2 of this, was the Enterprise incident. This is kind of cool. This is almost like a bit of conspiracy spy stuff going on in this one. We see Kirk and Romulan in the ears, which is kind of cool. And then Kirk also being put in the Vulcan death grip, and Spock gets a bit of action, and it's a terrible, boring title, the Enterprise didn't. But and actually, this, despite all of this, what I've described, it's kind of a ho-hum episode. I know some people like this one. When I was reading, I read some other reviews of it after I watched it. And some people think it's a pretty good episode, but honestly, I was more entertained by Spock's Brain in this one, so there you go. Right, the next one was, bear with me, the Paradise Syndrome. Right, this is, I'm kind of conflicted over this episode. It's kind of what Kirk does on his time off episode. Basically, there's an asteroid heading for a planet. Kirk gets there, he accidentally gets knocked out and forgets who he is. But it's kind of interesting to see Kirk stripped of his captaincy and living a sort of simple life. Now they're kind of Native Americans in dress and way they act, which we've seen before in that other one where they've got the Declaration of what is it, between the comms and the, I can't remember what it was. But basically we saw another one that kind of covering that idea, but this is just, people living on the land simply. Kurt doesn't know who he is, so he's like becomes a new person. It does contain some interesting ideas. There's a kind of discussion about a sort of master alien race seeding the galaxy with humanoid forms, explaining, how Vulcans and humans, for example, can interbreed, and Klingons and humans, and so on and so forth. But that's kind of glossed over. Kirk hooks up with a beautiful native of the planet called Miramani, but it's kind of got a dodgy racist angle. I mean, I don't think it was malign in any way, but it's got this whole thing of like noble, ignorant savages having a white dude as their saviour. Yeah, Shatner's big time overacting in this one, and there's some dumb plotting going on. For example, when Kirk gets knocked out, do they leave someone searching for him? No, they just leave the planet and whiz off because they got to check out this asteroid. They don't leave a search party or anything, which is ridiculous. If he's injured, he's going to die. But there you go, plot flaw. And stuff like we have to presenting this plot, Kirk as some sort of saviour or messiah or something. He saves a drowning boy. Yeah, oh well, that's handy for the story. And all this convergent cultural evolution nonsense that keeps persisting through this. However, it didn't bore me. I thought it was a reasonably decent episode, and it was kind of cool to see him dressed up like that. They say things at the last minute, but I'm sure we've seen other ones similar where an impending asteroid or collision has to be averted. Number 4 in this season, not a great season so far, I think you'll agree, was an episode called And the Children Shall Lead. I definitely like this one in parts, especially this kind of spooky bit where the kids start chanting there. They have this like nursery rhyme chant about a friendly angel, and it kind of reminded me of the chant that goes in the Freddy Krueger films. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. It kind of reminded me of that. When kids do that kind of chant, it's kind of creepy anyway. But a lot of the actual episode was poorly executed. It's got some really, really bad acting from Shatner. I think possibly the worst I've seen it so far. He has to sort of portray anxious, and it's almost, I don't know, it's kind of Joey Tribbiani fart acting, but not as good. And also Spock is kind of a non-character in this. He just does lines that could have come from any member of crew. There's nothing distinctly Spock about his written words in this. However, I did like James Doohan has got some dramatic lines to deliver, and he does it really well. He's really good in this. This is maybe one of James Doohan's best performances, or the best opportunity he had to show what he could do. I really liked him in this. And there's some weird stuff when, like, one of the things is McCoy is a bit concerned the kids don't seem to be grieving. And near the end, when they start crying, he comes in and starts grinning. They're crying. He says something like, "They're crying." Good. Well, now the script explains that, but it just feels weird seeing something like that. I kind of liked it though. I kind of liked it. It's weird. The main alien, who was the friendly angel they conjured up, was actually a lawyer, a famous lawyer in real life, not an actor. But he was performed pretty well. This episode though, you do have to put up with some really, really terrible acting from Shatner. I just looked it up. The lawyer in question was called Melvin. It played the character Gorgon. Gorgon is Melvin Belly, his name was. Apparently had as clients Mick Jagger and Jack Ruby. So there you go. That's kind of an interesting background to that. Number 5 in this set is an episode called Is There in Truth No Beauty? This starred Diane Muldaur, who was in the season 2 episode, but this time as a different character. She's a blind telepath that accompanies this person of the so-called Medusan race, who are so grossly disgusting that they send you mad if you see them. She's great in this. It's a garbled story, but there's enough in it going on, and I think if the story had been put together slightly better, this could have been one of the classics. However, it was still pretty good. It's kind of, there's a good scene in it where Nimoy is this melded creature that's half Spock, half this character called Kolos, who's one of these Medusans. I think they're Medusans. And he's smiling and talking, and he's entranced with his new senses. Nimoy does this role really well. Shatner doesn't do much in this. He's a bit of a dick actually in some places, but he doesn't do much. There is one that really cheesy section where Spock has to wear this medal called an eye dick, which apparently, I think I read about it in Shatner's Star Trek memories, where it was this sort of badge thing that Roddenberry come up with to sell to kids, and he wanted to feature in the show to boost its sales. And Nimoy was kind of forced to wear it. But it's a bit tawdry. It was hawking his toy, in the middle of an episode. Because at this point he was so-called executive producer, but he was pretty much off the show. He'd turn up now and again. really like this. Diane Muldaur really helps with this episode. She is really good, and as I say, Nimrod's performance was really good. Let's have a look. The next one was a terrific episode, Spectre of the Gun. Well, in this one, glowing entity alien types think the humans are violent savages and sentence them to sort of die by their own hand kind of stuff by putting them in a scenario which they've plucked from someone's mind, which is basically the gunfight at the OK Corral. This was a spectacularly good episode, very impressive. It's a classic, definitely. It's got excellent writing, pacing, acting. All the main characters in this episode are Spock, Kirk, McCoy, Scotty, and Chekhov. It's nice to see Chekhov getting a slightly bigger part in all this, being part of the gang. And everyone puts in a great performance. Shatner's a little bit dodgy here and there, but not as bad as we've seen him in a couple of the earlier episodes. But it's got some really great moments. It's got an exotic sort of feel to the whole vibe of these half buildings, a red sky. There's a floating brain with eyes in a cloud. And there's also a really good sequence where Spock mind melds with everyone to make sure they understand that what they're presented with is an illusion. Because if they don't really completely believe this, they're going to die. And so that's a really good scene. There's some cool fighting moves from Shatner too. He does, flying kick, two-footed kicks and stuff like that. Really, really kind of funny. But Shatner's all about that kind of thing when he gets into fights. It's kind of funny, right? So this, in my opinion, so far this season is really not quite as bad as it's painted. Spectre of the Gun is a really terrific episode, and is there in truth no beauty? I really enjoyed too. Next episode, number 7, I think, in our list is Day of the Dove, which is a pretty solid episode, as I say. Apart from there's some sword fighting, which is obviously with rubber swords, which is a bit silly. But basically, an alien's contrived it so Klingons and humans are stuck on the Enterprise and are engaged in battle. But people seem to recover almost, really quickly from quite serious wounds. And basically they're starting to realise this alien's kind of feeding off the hate. Now, the Klingon captain in this is called Kang. Is probably the best Klingon we've seen so far. He's a good character. He's got a good nuanced performance. It's not pantomime. He's obviously a thinking being. He's not just a goofy Klingon who wants to fight everyone. I think he's the strongest Klingon character in the original series. And he's got this quite beautiful wife Tamara. There's a bit of kind of suggestion of rapiness as well, which comes up a lot in these old show. There's lots of the ultra violence. There's race hate going on. We get Sula karate chopping someone in a move, knocking them out in a move you only ever see in 60 shows. I've seen it here. I remember it from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. stuff like that. It's kind of funny. And it's kind of weird to see Chekhov getting rapey, but he's being influenced by an alien. He's not in his sound mind, but it does a good performance, but it's kind of weird to see. Good episode, really fine episode this. And it's watching these views made me sort of realise season 3 has got some good high points. And as I say, Kang as a character was really, really a standout among the Klingons, the various Klingons we've seen so far in the original series. Okay, that brings us to number 8, I believe, which is got a great title. Not sure about the rest of it. It's called For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. This one's a bit odd. In fact, McCoy, Bones, DeForest Kelly's performance in this is really good. He plays it with a lot of dignity. Basically, McCoy finds out he's dying. He's only got a year to live, and Kirk wants to protect him, but he insists on coming on an away team. And they find there's a hollow asteroid, they think, and when they beam inside it, there's an entire race living in there, and they think that's the world, where in fact it's a hollowed out spaceship. I mean, the reasons for that are really unclear in the episode. It's not really explained, but there's a woman in charge. She kind of falls in love with McCoy, and he decides that he wants to have some happiness, and he's going to stay there. Meanwhile, Kirk's going for and Spock are going for all sorts of shenanigans, trying to sort of get out of it. It's got the real old Star Trek chestnut of a computer being the society's so-called god or whatever. But has been played out way too many times at this point. And it wraps up really quickly. There's some good things about this. I don't understand why they also find this society have got a cure for McCoy. But it's really unclear of why this alien race have not explained what's going on to this so-called crew or people who are living in it. They're sort of kept in dark, that isn't well explained. And also McCoy gets married to this woman and leaves her, and she's really good looking. It doesn't kind of make sense. So it had some flaws, but it was kind of interesting. Great title though, great title. Okay, that brings us to number 9, the Tholian Web. Now, I do know they were on quite restricted budgets in the third series. They basically the budget was slashed, so they had to make the best of it. And they use it to really good effect here by having the Enterprise search for another ship called the Defiant, and then using really the sets of the Enterprise as the sets of the Defiant. And there's a really creepy bit where they beam over and they're walking around, basically corpses lying around, which is really kind of dark when you think about it. It's quite an original episode compared to what we've had. We get a lot of repeating themes in Star Trek. This is much more original than usual. And then basically Kirk ends up being phased out of existence, and they can't find it, but they know he's floating around in a spaceship. And Spock's trying to work out where they may occur in the same time space, so they can beam Spock aboard. So there's this ongoing tension of having to find Kirk before his air runs out, and also while they're in place and they can't move very well because the ships have lost power, there's this alien craft building a big net around them, the Tholian Web. It's a really, really interesting one then, because it's not about action, it's about tension, and I really think they did it really well. Also, there's a bit where members of the crew start going a bit nuts, and Chekhov in particular goes bananas, and also Uhura gets some more screen time than usual. I think this is a classic too, actually. There's just something about it. It feels almost like a horror film. I liked it a lot. I haven't seen it, but apparently it leads off to... There's a really good Enterprise two-parter episode that sort of leads off from this, called something like In a Mirror Darkly. I haven't seen it, so I don't know anything about it. I noticed that being mentioned on various sites that talk about this episode. Alright, that leads us to the last one on this list. So we've had some really good ones here. We've had, Day of the Dove, Spectre of the Gun, Is There in Truth No Beauty, and some other ones that are kind of good. I think it's been a solid set of episodes. Leads us to number 10. This is Plato's Stepchildren. Now, Shatner actually describes this as a bit of a throwaway episode, and it's kind of mostly discussed because it's got the so-called first interracial kiss on TV in it, where Uhura and Kirk kiss. And there was lots of BS around that, about southern states wouldn't like this, so they wanted short alternatives. So the guys actually, Uhura and Shatner goofed around, so the shots were ruined just so that they didn't have any choice. In fact, Shatner actually says in his autobiography, he denies it was the first kiss. He goes, you can see they're not kissing, they're just pressing their faces together. Anyway. There's also some quite silly, and as I say, Shatner thinks this is a throwaway episode, apart from this point about the kiss. But I think it was a better episode than he's saying. There are some silly elements. We get Spock and Kirk dancing around like fools and quoting Lewis Carroll. However, there's a lot of dark in here that the aliens they have to deal with, who have got extremely powerfully developed telekinetic powers, are basically sadists. They feel like psychopaths. They've been corrupted by their power and lack any sort of empathy. They got this midget who's called Alexander, who's their like plaything, and basically their chew toy. And there's some great scenes in it. The actor playing Alexander the Dwarf has a great sort of monologue where he talks about he understands that all this time he thought it was him that was the problem, but really it's them. They're the bad people. It reminds you of, we're more sophisticated these days. We know about stuff like people that are treated badly sometimes take on a sort of a mantle of blaming themselves, and there's kind of that in the writing. It's kind of quite cool. It is like almost a mini portrait of a chronic victim realising their victimisation is not something they should blame themselves for. And there's a kind of cool scene with Nurse Chapel and Uhura where they're both scared and like these psycho aliens are setting up something horrible to happen. There's even a little song that Spock does, which I believe Nimoy composed about women, and when they give themselves, part of themselves to a man, they're just left with bitter dregs. I thought it was kind of quite touching. It could be viewed as corny, but I kind of liked it. There was lots about this episode I liked, actually. Unfortunately, it winds up very neatly. Kurt just takes their word for it. I think it's a very good episode. I don't know if I'm alone in that thinking, but I really liked it. So overall, of these 10, I think we got 4 or 5, in my opinion, very solid episodes. So not quite as bad as Star Trek lore dictates around season 3. Now, maybe the rest of them are terrible. I don't know yet. I have watched them all, but it's been a long, long time since I've last went through all of these. Usually I've watched them in order, so I kind of get punchy about it through season 3, so but I'm pacing myself a bit more, so I'm hoping to give a more rounded opinion this time. Okay, so that's it for those first 10 of season 3. Hope you enjoyed it. Just so you know, we're on Stitcher now, or just come to www.thegoodthebadandtheodd if you want to catch up on the more podcasts. You can leave me any feedback on info@thegoodthebadandtheodd.com. That'd be cool. Also, we're on Facebook all over the place, so which is facebook.com, The Good, the Bad, and the Odd, but with each word separated by a period. The period, good, and so on. You get the idea. The Good, the Bad, and the Odd. Okay, bye from me.